globally, civilization, Homo sapiens footprint is expanding. And where you see the darkness or the darker areas, this is where perhaps nature is still thriving. But all these other civilizational dots, the lights, is where increasingly damage has begun to take place. And that is why Vishwa talks, and that is why this topic, and that is why we are all here together. System can't be controlled, but they can be designed and redesigned. We can listen to what the system tells us and discover how the properties and our values can work together to bring forth something much better than would ever be produced by our will alone. So our will and the system thinking needs to work together. Our values, our will, and the system thinking. We need to belong to ecosphere. We need to belong to all abiotic and beyond. This is what ecological self is. Once we begin the connections and the transitions and the threads, multiple threads, tapestry, a quilt, whatever metaphor you want to use, this is the importance of recognizing that our self is that way very much part of the system, and ecology, ethics, and design help us connect those things. Resources are not just land, my property, my farm, that Aravali hill that provides me marbles and granites. It is about courage, endurance, ingenuity, integrity, all those. This is very close to the religious concept of grace. This is what we get when we consider ourselves as ecological self. So good to be here. Though being like thousands of miles away, I'm with people in India. I'm very happy to be here. Without much ado, let us start the presentation because all the formalities have been accomplished and we just need to go on with the presentation. Despite my formal degrees and life work experience, I'm still learning from this system. And I know that in the audience and beyond this audience, there are more knowledgeable and wiser people than me. So I'm interested in talking with you guys as much as this time allows us. And the last line is about illustrations. Okay, so this is our topic. Now let us begin the main story. So much of my presentation is going to be illustrations, but some of the slides are also quite wordy. So bear with me. This is the presentation outline. So the first thing first, quick reality check. Our common present, because the subtitle of this talk is For Our Common Future. So let us check our common present first. This is not just a pretty picture. Globally, civilization, Homo sapiens footprint is expanding. And where you see the darkness or the darker areas, this is where perhaps nature is still thriving. But all these other civilizational dots, the lights, is where increasingly damage has begun to take place. And that is why Vishwa talks, and that is why this topic, and that is why we are all here together. So let us understand that this planet Earth, in the ocean, in the atmosphere, all that together make what we call the ecosphere, also known as planet Earth. I don't want to belabor the point, but you can see what is happening. Clear cutting of the forest in Indonesia, resorts being built on islands, the wildlife coming out during COVID time. This is a photo from Sri Lanka. And polar bear. Every day, we might not realize the water has not come under our feet yet, but under his feet, it is existing. And the wildlife running away from deforestation. So this is a more complex picture of the planet Earth. According to some research, and I cited the source below, there are 846 ecoregions that represent our living planet. There is no one single thing. If I put my pointer here at near Gujarat, if you can see in India, 4 or 5, at least 3 ecoregions are converging near Vadodara, where I'm from. So if we continue like this, then a lot of negative feedbacks are going to take place. And to avoid it, we need to save 50% of the land and seas must be from our intrusion. And here in this diagram, this lighter spots here, Nicobar Island Development Project is also coming out. So everywhere, the picture is pretty bleak. Ecological footprint nation-wise, if you look at this diagram, then the impact that humanity has on our planet in each country or each continent is quite visible. Wherever you see the shrinking diagram, look at Africa in comparison to Europe. Africa's footprint is much smaller. Europe's footprint is much bigger. Look at the three big consumers. But ecological footprint is bigger, seemingly bigger in India and China, but the population is much higher. Whereas Europe and North America, or especially Canada and especially the USA, USA has three times geographic area of India and one third of population of India, and still it consumes so much. So these are the good fellows. These are the middle countries doing okay, poor, and in deep trouble. Ecological wealth wise, these countries are quite wealthy, but the biocapacity conditions are greater in the greener areas. The red tones are where the biocapacity has been breached, whereas the green spots where the biocapacity is still, they are giving actually credit. It is not only breached, but they are giving credit to other countries. Endangered species, and this is about amphibians. It is an indicator how much each continent is losing the population. So these are all the indicators where we can get a sense of what is going to happen, what is happening as we speak. So every year, this biocapacity green line is decreasing and ecological footprint is increasing. And that is a very serious thing that we need to consider. The acceleration is shown here, and you don't need to read this. You just see the shape of the graph, how socioeconomic trends and all the indicators are increasing, and how Earth systems are also suffering. All these graphs are showing that kind of information. So picture closer at home in India and our cities is not, we have diversity. We have protected areas, we have rural landscape, we have suburban landscapes, we have urban landscape. But we also have this trend going on that people in rural area as well as in urban areas are suffering. And everywhere around us, WhatsApp, Instagram, everything is full of this kind of news. And this is the picture for India, that our graph is widening and we are suffering. So now through the main topic, seeds, systems, ecologies, ethics, designs, and self. Self, or should it be selves? We'll see. So let us start with systems. This is the best diagram to describe systems. All interconnected parts, whether it is a sunflower, whether it is a depiction of ecosphere, which is atmosphere, lithosphere, hydrosphere, biosphere, everything put together, or whether it is some microorganismic detail that we think about. These are all systems. More simply put, our body is a system, or a house being built is a system. System has components which are interconnected and they perform certain functions. They meet certain purpose and they perform certain functions. So if we remove all these structural elements and pile them up on the site, we'll call them components. Posts, beams, the cladding, the sheets that are put there. And we said those are components. But when they come together in a particular manner to serve some purpose, they create a structure. And because of that structure, certain function happens. And structure and function continuously going over a period of time create change. Nature has its own laws to create changes. Our activities accelerates the change and destroys it. It is similar to our own body. There are skeletal systems, blood circulation systems, every neurological system, everything comes together and then it makes a body. But if the capacity of our body to absorb is reduced and we still keep on dumping things inside, then we know what happens. All the diseases begin to show up. So conventionally understood, systems are set of things put together, right? And our faith and focus is on systems analysis and modeling. However, if you look at this conventional model, that has led to a false belief that we can fully understand anything. We can tweak anything, we can predict anything, we can control anything, and thereby change the world according to our goals and desires. That's not so. Brunella Meadows is one of the best authors. Her book is, I'm mentioning in the next slide, but her essay, if you can Google it and find out Dancing with the System, it's a fantastic essay. Brunella Meadows, in her book, Thinking in Systems, a primer, explains the key characteristics. Systems are self-organizing. The future can't be predicted, but it can be envisioned. What we are talking about is that we should not, because they are non-linear and they are inherently unpredictable, we should not rely on computer systems or modeling and all that to predict the future, because it is non-linear, it is complicated, it is unpredictable. System can't be controlled, but they can be designed and redesigned. We can listen to what the system tells us and discover how the properties and our values can work together to bring forth something much better than could ever be produced by our will alone. So our will and the system thinking needs to work together. Our values, our will, and the system thinking. So she further clarifies that we need to listen. When I take the students for a site visit, I tell them listen to the site. Don't use your camera to take the pictures or talk with each other. So if we understand this, we all are required. It requires full humanity, our rationality, our ability to sort truth from falsehood, our intuition, our compassion, our vision, and our morality. That's what it is. That is what system thinking tells us. And this is a concluding image of systems. Just no words, just an image. So for each five seeds, now the next one is ecology, then ethics, then design, and then self. For each one of them, there are few slides that I'll just, the design component I'm elaborating because that is the field I'm from. So now ecologies. Many of you know this, but I'm deliberately using the word ecologies. It is not one ecology. There are thousands of ecologies, or at least as we'll see, there are way different kinds of ecologies that come into picture. So this is what Indo-Malayan ecological region, these sub-regions, the desert, Gangetic plains, and the Western Ghat, they all converge almost just south of Vadodara, just in Gujarat. So this is what ecological mapping should be done. We are using geopolitical maps. That's not enough. We need to think in ecoregions. So before a child learns political map of our country, the child should learn the ecological map of our country, or any country for that matter. So what are ecologies? Ecologies are about embedded interacting hierarchies. It involves understanding of shaping. It involves, yes, this is important, involves understanding and shaping vertical, horizontal, structural, and functional interrelationships among and between heterogeneous areas of ecosystems, landscape, and ecoregions. Now, this is technical, I know that. For most common people, this will go like a Vaibhav Suryavanshi Sixer, right? The latest hero who is doing Sixers in India. These sciences and their principles provide both information and inspiration. This is what is important to remember for people, that you may not understand ecology, but they provide inspiration and information for us to work with, and we'll see the examples. So when you look at this larger picture, right? So we start with a regional scale, some random region on planet Earth. Then we talk about landscape scale. So a region is consisting of many landscapes. Then many landscapes are composed of many ecosystems. Then many ecosystems are composed of local scale things. And within local scale too, also we can focus on a particular spot and learn about the ecology of that place. So this is embedded hierarchy. This is important. Most people do not think like that. Most professionals don't think like that. They take a site, they define the boundary, and they do their thing there. Then there is the cacophony of designs, cacophony of planning decisions versus, say, economic decisions, infrastructure decisions. They don't work together because we do not see that as a systematic view. So this is what I'm talking about. It starts with the bottom line, cells, molecules, tissues, organs, species. One type of species come together to make a population. Many populations come together to make a communities. Now, up to communities, guys, that is why we only talk about biology and biodiversity. Up to communities, it is all life. Ecosystems is when the life and the land both come together. We make an ecosystem. Many ecosystems come together to form landscapes. Many landscapes come together to form ecoregions. Falsely, they are in literature in many places, they are called biomes. They should not become biomes. And planet Earth should not be called biosphere, it should be called ecosphere. So this is just a few examples. I can add many different types of ecology. Many experts study this particular thing, they even smaller than population size, species ecology, all kinds of things. So, but hierarchically, population, community, ecosystem, landscape, eco-regional landscape. eco-regional ecology, human and social ecology, restoration ecology, conservation biology, deep ecology, whatnot. All these are, and environmental psychology is about the way our mind system works. And that is also important, the ecology of our neurological systems and brain. So just to simplify picture of how natural system, for example. So it is about climate, geology, landform, hydrology, soils, vegetation, and animals. And on top of that, among animals, we have excluded ourselves. We sit on top of the hill and we say, oh, this planet, we are the kings. And that's why the real granddaddy of all is right here, the sun. Without the incoming solar radiation, nothing of this would be possible. Not even climate, not insects, nothing. So this is how it goes from bottom to the top. But this is the environment side of it. This jumbled up, everything affects everything else, from the abiotic up to soil, up to landform, and the biotic animal, including fungi, vegetation, microorganisms. Soil and water are both abiotic and biotic. They have organic components as well as inorganic component. So this left-hand side is called environment, but this is how it begins. And therefore, there is no biotic without abiotic, right? And this jumble up that animals affect climate, human beings affect climate, or certain kind of hydrological changes happening because of dam building or draining the wetlands can affect soil, vegetation, landform, everything. Geology and climate do not get affected directly, but now we are seeing the results of climate change also. It is a responsibility of the citizens and built environment professionals. I am calling upon built environment professionals more so than politicians or bureaucrats because I belong to that group. But everybody needs to understand and apply principles of these disciplines to define questions correctly and questions and issues, and then come to comprehensive responses using traditional and modern tools for better quality of land and life. In that order, land and life, not in other order. So this is the concluding thing about the ecologies. Now ethics. This is a general understanding of what ethics mean to us, right? Rules, regulation, values. It applies to research, it applies to all fields. It is something potpourri of all these things that we fuzzily call ethics. We are not too sure. We are not as clear as this diagram is. We think different things are there, and we think that this is what makes ethics. So again, ethics is about feelings, empathizing, and then consciously working upon the right things to do based on moral values and for greater good, longer term good. The voice comes from within us to do the right thing. And many thinkers in India and beyond have talked beautifully about these things as well as practically about these ideas. So, how can we operationalize these fuzzy ideas? So, for example, the way we live, we need to leave options open for future generations. For example, for my profession of design and built environment, it is about not building or developing on a land even when it is developable and possible to develop. That is an ethical stand. It is about need based decision making and not just want based decision making. Done correctly with the knowledge of systems and ecology, well designed objects and places will result in a kind of aesthetics that includes ethics. In terms of saner development and design, it tells us that planet Earth and its assets are not there just for us. Other species have the right and need to survive and thrive too. So these are the larger principles, and this is what concluding slide for the summary slide for ethics as it relates to design, which is the next topic. So designs. If you go and ask somebody in National Institute of Design, they will talk about that different kind of design. If you talk about design with professions of built environment, then they will talk about different disciplines. I'm more focused not on graphic design and build product design or industrial design. Those are important too. And ethics, ecology, and systems thinking apply to those designs also. So this is a great example of design. Whether it is done by human beings or God, design is always an intentional creative intervention that affects the quality of land and life in that order. It affects first the land and therefore it affects life. Design requires a thorough knowledge and skills in system thinking, ecology, and ethics. And these are several publications. Many of you sitting here know about these authors. And these are more resources for everybody to explore. For each one of them, there are books, there are websites, and one can look at this. Design requires us to think differently. Connections, transitions are somewhat often forgotten. We can talk about context, we can talk about the site, the contents of the site, but we need to talk about connections. We need to talk about processes that affect particular place, a community, or a national park, or a government organization, whatever. So this is a thematic diagram to just explain how design thinking relate with system thinking, and design thinking results in something that is very critical for us to be aware of. All of us are designers. Just degree holders are not designers. You design your day. You are here at 11 o'clock or before 11 o'clock because you designed your remaining hours of a Saturday accordingly. We design every time because it is an intentional intervention we make, intentional change we make. Whether it is for exercising, walking, laughing, being with the family, meeting a deadline like I did just now, all things are intentional. So design is a complex discipline that combines all kinds of things. And it has all kinds of determinants, considerations that one has to go through. So for all the non-designers here, those who are working with professional designers, please appreciate what designers go through. They go through a lot. It is not just like I often hear as a landscape architect that what have you done? This work I could have done, gotten done with my local nursery person. They don't understand that I have considered climate, geology, landform, hydrology, soils, animals, everything, plus human ecology, plus deep ecology, plus spatial organization, all those things to design something. I'm not going to spend more time on this, it's too wordy. I'll just highlight that respect relationship between spirit and matter. Consider existing and evolving connections between spiritual and material consciousness. This is like a very philosophical sentence, and we can have 1 hour presentation on just spiritual and material consciousness. I know that there are experts out there who can talk about this for hours. But more importantly, we need to accept the responsibility for consequences of design decision upon human beings, the viability of natural systems, and their right to coexist with us. This is more for my fellow design professionals. But you being good consumer client, you should also know all these things. Those who are not traditional designers, conventional designers like us, like me. So if we understand this, and when we think about design, then we have to understand that design process becomes very critical. John Zeisel has written a book called Inquiry by Design, in which he has given this diagram. So every time a designer needs to go through this cyclic process again and again and again to come up to the final design, which is what most experienced designers do this intuitively, but new students are becoming less patient to go through these cycles again and again. So for a site, there are other things that are important. What needs to be considered? So these are the things that I was talking about: visual connections, political regulations, and hydrological things, cultural, natural histories. All these things are considered in good design. So there are a few examples I'm going to share. Master plan and landscape architecture based ecosystem and landscape ecological analysis synthesis. I'm not going to elaborate on much of this, but landscape architecture, it emerges from deep understanding of patterns and processes of nature and culture and results in meaningful aesthetic experiences is what I believe. So this was a site in Udaipur for proposed IIM campus. We were the 3 shortlisted consortia who were invited to make the presentations. This is slope analysis, this is hydrological analysis, this is percentage slope plus ridges and valleys. And this kind of detailed analysis is done by good landscape architectural firms. Then they come up with some plans, which then gets this is actually a landscape management plan that our firm had developed for the site. Then in collaboration with urban designers, engineers, building architects, we come up with a comprehensive development plan. And that plan, along with this detail, then the phase development are shown, what will be developed in the first phase and all that. So this is an example where these seeds ideas were applied. I don't have time to get into the details of that, but this is just a glimpse of that. Another example would be understanding Vishwamitra River, focusing on values and opportunities for a saner, holistic design. If we do this, then nature services, social inclusivity, regenerative economy, cultural identity, and rich experiential qualities can result. That was our team's aim. So one has to look at this big picture. This is the watershed. Can you get those who are from Vadodara? might be somewhat familiar with this, but the highest point is on the upper left-hand side, upper right-hand side here, Pavagadh Hill. And this red outline is Vadodara city. And these are all the tributaries that form the natural system of our ecoregion. Then within Vadodara also there are things that we can locate which are green, which have green and blue areas of Vadodara. Then the focus some years ago, since 2014, was on Vadodara Vishyamitra Riverfront Development Project, and we were a team of us worked together to come up with alternatives. Not only for this is for the front, the river passing through Vadodara, and this is for master's bachelor's project on Bukhinala, Bachelor of Architecture Patel. She did this work for Bukhinala. And these are the restoration techniques that can be applied to steep slopes along the Nala. And this is another thing that one can spend more time on. Understanding riparian zones becomes important in all these activities. Without that, we are just doing interventions that are really very, very harmful to not only the living beings, the animals and plants, but to our own self. And we need to present alternatives. We just cannot do analysis and awareness or advocacy for better future. We need to present better alternatives, what can be done. So awareness is important, advocacy is important, alternatives are important. They feed each other. But just focusing on one of them will not achieve the goal. And we need to do these three things together. This is one international example of large scale. So I showed you three scales, the side scale of IIM Udaipur site, then the watershed scale, and then this is even larger. This is the whole North American continent. They envision wildways. I don't have time to go into details of this. The Wildland project, you can Google it. But look at this. This thing is talking about identifying the gaps where nature is fragmented, then restoring degraded and fragmented landscape to make as many connections and patches and corridors as possible so that the entire ecoregion, entire continental scale ecoregions can function better. Now, finally, self, or as you will see, it should be selves. How do you define yourself? So, from Raval family and Trishant is from Shetty family. That is how we define each one of us, right? It's a very complex thing. It is a philosophical thing. It is biological thing. It is geographic thing. There are so many things that what we call self. What is self? Joanna Massis came to my rescue. In one of her essays, Greening of the Self, she talks about these things. Listen, this is important. The self is the metaphoric construct of identity and agency, which we focus our instincts for self-preservation, our need for self-approval, and the boundaries of our self-interest. So this is about we, me, I, and me, the big I, the big me. It is being replaced by wider constructs of identity and self-interest, by what you might call the ecological self or the eco-self, coextensive with other beings, coexisting it should be, and the life of our planet. It is what I will call the greening of the self. That is the name of the essay. So how can we make sense of this? This is where I want to introduce this diagram that Avni helped me make once I sent her the drawing. So we begin with me. At the most, will extend my family and friends. So as we grow up, our boundaries increase. When we are a baby, we are crying for food. That is me, biological survival. Then, as we grow up, we become more aware of our extended family, our friends, and that is what we call, oh, myself is not just me and my family name, but I'm also cousin of that, friend of this, and all that. So once we grow up further and we learn more, we think three more identities come together. My neighborhood. Oh, my neighborhood is so important. I grew up in this or that neighborhood. Whichever part of the country you are in, which country, whichever country you may be from, but we each have our identity or self associated with our neighborhood. Then we expand, oh, my village, town, or city. That is the self, that the expanding self. And then, oh, my state and or my province. That is also self. That this is, I belong to Vidarbha or I belong to Shivalik hills. So those are like political or geographic provinces also that are important. But more, and that results in what? Other countries. My countries then, and then other countries, and this world. Isn't that enough? यहाँ तक तो पहुंच गया, अब क्या करना है? But as Joanna Massey says, we need to belong to ecosphere. We need to belong to all abiotic and biotic and beyond. This is what ecological self is. Once we begin the connections and the transitions and the threads, multiple threads, tapestry, a quilt, whatever metaphor you want to use, this is the importance of recognizing that our self is that way very much part of the system, and ecology, ethics, and design help us connect those things. So, as Joanna Massey explains, in doing so, the extended self brings into play wider resources, courage. What are those resources? Look at the way she writes. Resources are not just land, my property, my farm, that Aravali hill that provides me marbles and granites. It is about courage, endurance, ingenuity, integrity, all those. This is very close to the religious concept of grace. This is what we get when we consider ourselves as ecological self. In system language, we can talk about it as synergy. But with this extension, the greening of the self, we can find a sense of buoyancy and resilience that comes from letting flow through us strength and resources that come to us with continuous surprise and sense of belonging. One edit I wanted to add the word resistance here. There is a paper I have written about it, but resilience is not the only thing. Without resistance, our systems will also fail. That is another story for another day. So all these things are possible. So this idea of ecological self is essential for increasingly troublesome 21st century, our common future, to see ourselves not as part of ourselves, a part of and not apart from the larger systems. Raman Maharshi, when he was asked, how do you deal with others? And he famously answered, there is no other. That is the continuum, that is the non-duality that is important. So unity in duality. Duality also is a unit. So this is the important thing. And as I have suggested in other sections of SEEDS, this is also, there are many other important authors in each region, each country. And some of these are important names that I wanted to share with you. So this is the concluding image of ecological self. So we are going towards the end now. So let us remind ourselves that there is magic going on in this world. There is no one image. There are two images now. There is magic going on this planet every second, every minute. There is a sunrise happening somewhere, and the sun rays are starting their magic to reactivate algae, to reactivate president's office. And there is a sunset happening somewhere where the dusk animals are now finding shelter and the lights will come up and human civilization will continue 24/7. Let us remind ourselves of this ecological way to see the world. So we need to valuing and integrating ecosystems. These five interrelated domains of inquiry, reflection, action together, we have the potential to lead us to a better way of defining our questions and to saner, desirable answers. This is very important. We are so focused on innovations and answers without properly defining the questions, comprehensively defining the questions. And therefore, we applaud plastic से paving blocks बना दिए वाह 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 we do this, right? But it is just a band-aid, not a permanent solution, and it also has consequences. So these ideas are not just one person's domain or one country's domain. These ideas are based on ancient wisdom of all cultures and contemporary knowledge. And what each one of us have, but we don't use often, is common sense. So a sound understanding of these domains will help us to go from the whole to part and part to whole, eventually removing the duality or contradiction. And that is what our collective effort should be. So what we need to be doing is a new way of seeing, new way of teaching, new way of learning, and even unlearning and practicing is needed. So before civilization began, or before early civilizations were like this, then industrial civilizations came up and divided things. There is industrial land use, the settlement, farms, and wilderness. But wilderness got reduced, the darker black got reduced. The new vision, the regenerative image is where everything is integrated. I've taken this image from a book by John Tillman Lyell, whose name I had mentioned in one of the slides. The book's name is Regenerative Design for Sustainable Development. And that is where he has described this diagram. And this last diagram is like this. So what SEEDS does is SEEDS allow for multi-layered resilience, dynamic equilibrium, serendipity, poetry, and options for future generations. This is the ideal, but this is where we need to go. This is what we need to be first aware of, advocate for, and provide alternatives for. So SEEDS, as if human survival and thriving matters, emerge from the society and individuals who value nature its innate beauty and its larger interconnected systems, and who conscientiously, not only consciously, but conscience के साथ and with consistency, a positive, heartfelt, and mindful action, both at the societal and individual levels. And this is why what we should be doing is this kind of thing that is where they're all interconnected. And we should be talking about all these things together. And until then, we are just fooling ourselves, taking away the right of other species to survive and postponing our demise. You read this. A great author, a great lady who talked about this idea in her book, Restoring and in the Service of the Wild is the name of the book, and the subtitle is Restoring Rehabilitating Damaged Lands. We can be, we need to.